Now that June is upon us, it's time to talk about 6 meters, the magic band. Why is it so magical? One of the reasons is sporadic E. This is an unusual form of radio propagation because it uses characteristics of the Earth's ionosphere. Most propagation is dictated by the ionospheres of the F region, plus normal cyclical propagation. What sporadic E does is bounce signals off smaller clouds, as they're called, of ionized atmospheric gas in the lower E region. Now, these clouds are only about 55 to 100 miles up, which makes these openings very interesting. You could work a guy in New Mexico and not hear the guy next door in Texas. Or with a double hop or triple hop, you can actually work into Europe or Africa from the Midwest. You can also work the F2 region. That layer can also propagate VHF signals several thousands of miles. This F2 layer is the highest reflecting layer at the very top of that on your screen there, about 200 miles up. Now, when sunspot activity is high, the F2 layer can become intensely ionized due to radiation from the sun. And this is where you can work some of your best DX. Transequatorial propagation, also known as TEP for 6 meters, occurs during late afternoon and early evening over a maximum distance of about 3,700 miles. What happens, they believe, is a high electron concentration is found on each side of the magnetic equator, usually between 10 to 20 degrees latitude. Tropospheric ducting is where propagated signals travel in part of the atmosphere in a warm, high-pressure system. This is most prevalent during the summer and fall months. Now, scatter is where your radio signal will intersect with another radio signal, and where they intersect, usually only about 6 miles up, is where you have scatter and you can work each other. Now, with meteor scatter, you're bouncing off the ionized trail left behind the meteor. If you ever hear that guy out there for like 2 seconds as clear as can be and then he's gone, you're both working off the same ionized trail of the meteor. So who can play on 6 meters? Extra class, general class, and yes, technicians. You can play on there as well. Now here's a look at the ARRL's band plan for 6 meters. You can see it takes up a lot of space. There's a lot of room out there, but what you're really going to want to focus on is the beacons, the DX window, and the North American calling frequency. There's even a spot for the digital modes when working meteor scatter or moon bounce. Which leads me to what can you do on 6? Well, you can do it all. Sideband, CW, digital. And if you're really adventurous, you can do moon bounce. Now you're also going to need specialized software in order to do this, and you can also, feeling adventurous, do a little meteor scatter, and that's where you're bouncing off the ionized trail of the meteors, and you're going to need specialized software to do this as well. And I'll show you where you can get those links towards the end. Now, what do you need to get started or want? Well, obviously you're going to need a radio, but most radios today actually come with 6 meters. Or if you're into the vintage, you can get what Bob Heil had. He had a 1956 Harvey Wells. He was one of the first 10 sideband operators on 6 meters and actually worked all states back in the early 60s on 6 meters. But according to Bob, that band was open 24/7 back in 1963. What else are you going to need? Well, you're going to need an antenna. Now here's a few antennas that I found that are relatively inexpensive. They're all under $150 depending on what you want to get. You can go online and shop around. Plenty of reviews and things out there, but DX Engineering is a good source. If you want to go to the extreme like Jerry likes to go, you could get this Innov antenna, Force 12. It's 10 elements on a 60-foot boom, and we got it 78 feet in the air. And what else are you going to need or want? Well, you might want some extra power. You don't necessarily need it. Jerry and I, we use an ACOM 1500. It does high power for our HF bands as well as 6 meters. But if you're going to do the moon bounce or the meteor scatter, you're going to need special software. And here are just a few sites that are great when it comes to 6 meters. Whiskey 7GJ, he's got a great resource there. He's got how to do moon bounce. He's got all kinds of tools. Basic operating procedures, a lot of stuff you need to know if you want to do EME, which stands for Earth to Moon to Earth, or it's commonly known as moon bounce. Another great resource is Whiskey Sierra Juliet Tango, which is WSJT. Now that stands for Joe Taylor. He is the Nobel Peace Laureate. He invented JT65 as well as JT6M, which is for 6 meters. A lot of great downloads and software you'll want or need when you're running moon bounce or meteor scatter. So you've got your radio, your antenna, and your software. So what's the exchange outside of a contest? You're just going to need to give your call sign, a signal report, and your grid square. Now if you're working at the expedition, you don't need to give them your grid square. That slows them down. So for example, WB9Z, this is NV9L, you are 59 into Echo November 60. Or you could do Echo November 60 Bravo Radio. Now if you don't know your grid square, I would go to qrz.com/gridmapper. What's cool about this, you don't need to know your latitude and longitude. A map will pop up, you can zoom out or zoom in until you can find where you live, and just keep zooming in until it's on your house. If you click it, a box will show up and it'll give you your 6-digit grid square. On top of that, it also is going to show little red dots of other licensed hams in that same grid square. So that's kind of cool. Something else you might want to do before you make your first contacts on 6 meters is go ahead and print up some maps to have in front of you. I like to go to callsignsoftware.com. They have the worldwide map. It just gives the 2-digit letter prefix, and print that off so you know where they're calling from. And ICOM has a great U.S. grid square map, ARRL does as well, which gives full details of the 4-digit prefixes. So you're all ready to go, but you don't know if 6 is open. Well, what's the best way to tell? Beacons are a great way to tell. They're at 50.0, usually through 50.75, and I love this for the beacon list. It's a great site, and if you mouse over any of those little red locators, it's going to give you all the information on the frequency and where that beacon's located. Another place you can tell if 6 is open is spotting networks. Rather than the cluster, you can go to DX Maps. That's going to give you show 6-meter QSOs made and where they're made on that map. It's a little clunky, so I prefer to use N3TUQ. Now they have it for 2 meters. They also have it for 10 meters. Obviously, we're going to show you 6 meters. And if you look at the bottom screen, it's going to tell you how many QSOs an hour were being made on that band. And you can zoom in, click on any of those little people there, and it's going to give you the full information on that contact, what grid squares they're calling to and from. So nice, great resource. Another one I like to go to is ON4KST. And this is sort of the chat room. Now, when you go in here, we're going to go into the IARU for 50 megahertz region 2. If you don't know what region you are, here's a region map. Now, region 2 is all of North America, Greenland, and South America. Now when you come in here, you're going to need to either register. If you've never registered, it's free, and then log in. And once you log in, you're going to see the regular spots from the cluster over there in the middle column. And in the left column is all the chatter going on about 6 meters. So really helpful. Like to have this up when I'm waiting for 6 to open. What's another way you know 6 is open? Why don't you just call CQ? Go to the calling frequency for North America, 50.125. Give a call. Call CQ. Somebody comes back to you, work that call, and then move up to another frequency when you want to start running. And once you start getting into 6 meters, you might want to consider joining SMERC, 6 Meter International Radio Club. They have great resources there as well. A lot of those websites I showed you earlier, you're going to find on here in the helpful link. If you make 6 contacts with 6 club members on 6 meters and pay $6, you're a club member. And last, don't forget you can use 6 at your field day. And guess what? It's a free station. And what do I mean by free? Well, at field day, if you're a Class A entry, you can have that free go-to station, but you can also have another free station if it's 50 megahertz or up.